Hey gang, welcome back to the Taking Chances podcast. I got a very special one coming to you today. Today we're going to have a good conversation about the importance of leadership development and training. And coming to us live from Denver, not live when you're seeing him, but live when we're having this conversation, I've got Jeremy Friedman, who's a seasoned hospitality and staffing expert with over 30 years of experience. Jeremy, thanks for joining me today. I know that we know so much about each other, but let's hop right into it, man. How you doing? How was the trip to Hawaii? And welcome back to the cold tundra of Colorado.
Thank you so much, Shaun. Great to see you. Thanks for inviting me to get on Taking Chances here. Hawaii was amazing. My wife surprised me with this holiday weekend and hit one of my bucket list items. I finally got to try sailing, which was incredible, and being out in the ocean, wonderful pictures, and just time with family. It was amazing.
And I know we're going to get into this today too, Jeremy, but I think you're touching on a few things even before we get on of like how to be a great leader. So I think what you're saying right now too, is we're just talking a little bit about balance, right? So it's weird when we start off about leadership and training and development to have a conversation around your vacation, but like, let's just hop into that one in itself. How much balance do you give to your personal life as transposed to the business life? Because this is a conversation that comes up with almost every entrepreneur or leader I get. So I'm just curious how you balance that yourself, kind of just getting back from a big endeavor. Like, how do you still handle your business while you're doing this? How do you balance both?
It's funny. I learned a long time ago, and being in hospitality, and Shaun, you were in hospitality and restaurants and so forth, really difficult to separate, really difficult to prioritize family and friends and loved ones and kind of balance that out. And so, honestly, I think in one hand, it gets a little bit easier the further you rise in your career. You learn how to navigate those waters, if you will, a little bit differently. But part of it is creating an honest harmony with your family and with your work, and being transparent with your work and saying, I need this time to recharge and refresh. And, if there's something critical that comes up, I'm absolutely available. And then with the family, it's taking the most of that time. It's turning off the cell phone, putting it away. It's dedicating that attention. It's not having those out at the dinner table when you're on those trips and things of that nature. And I think it was Jeff Bezos from Amazon who changed or got my attention when he changed from balance to harmony. When your work is taken care of and you don't have to worry about it when you're with family, you have harmony. And when your family's taken care of and you don't have to worry about them because they have what they need, you can focus on work and creating that harmony where they kind of flow together. Because I think sometimes when people and even leaders are talking about balance, you're really talking about a separation. But we all know separating work and personal is really difficult to do, especially in this day and age. I mean, this is in 1950 where when you leave work, they can't get a hold of you because all you have is a landline and no computer. You have your cell phone. They can text you. They can email you. They can call you. You're tethered.
And I think that's super sharp and something I don't hear a lot of people talking about, and something that I know I've gone through personally. Jeremy, you and I have chatted about it, going from a full office setting to being fully remote in itself. Just as a leader, number one, to develop yourself into the right habits and disciplines, I would say, because being remote has its own complications. And I would say even for myself, like loving what I do, being pretty disciplined. I would say I came into owning a business with a pretty good skill set of discipline built into me already. But having that level of freedom is just something to go back in of like, okay, how do I balance all this? And I think this goes hand in hand with leadership development, because a lot of times organizations we're coaching, organizations that we're working with, whether it's recruiting, executive coaching, any kind of operational SOPs, 99% of the time, what we are coaching and consulting on are not things inside of their organization, but to how to balance the stress from whatever endeavor they're in. And the same thing, like you said, people are trying to be two different folks. And myself, for the longest time, I was young in my career in operations and hospitality. I was probably given too much responsibility without enough business maturity. And I tended to like rule with a hammer. And you might laugh at this now because we've had tons of conversations, and it's so opposite of who I am. But the problem was not just for my business results were pretty good during then, Jeremy. If I'm going to be honest, my business results have catapulted a little bit, but my personal freedom is much better, because back then when I didn't really have that acumen, I was one person inside of the organization and another outside. So I was this loving, empowering, energetic person outside. And then, just like you said, but when I went into work, I had to separate. So now I'm like this authoritative, person that it wasn't really me and it wasn't authentic. And again, my results increased from changing that. But the benefit, to talk about the same time when I was having those habits, no time with the family. I lived in an airport for honestly a third of the year, every year. I had all the benefits of flying so much and all the ramifications that come with traveling so much. So I know that you're someone that's balanced this as well. And I know we're talking about having the boundaries around the family, but what are some good skill sets that you think every leader should possess? Like, what are some things you see tangible across the fields that you're working in?
Well, I think in leadership, and you mentioned family, and let me asterisk this, because for the people who are listening to this podcast, what I'm saying is not easy to do, and I make my mistakes and have to be reminded by work or my wife fairly often
Yeah.
to say, hey, put this down. Hey, it's time to do this, because it's easy to get into that rhythm of just focusing on what's top of mind, what's rolling around up in your head.
It's like the gerbil mentality
And
too, right? It's like whatever that chatter is, just solve, solve, solve. And I think the busier you become, the more that chatter escalates if you don't have it.
exactly, it's noise. It's noise
Mhm.
in your head. And so for a leader, I think first and foremost, leaders have to demonstrate what they want the people in their charge, the people that report to them, to be. So if you want them to be, as you said, that stoic leader who's, very, very authoritative, um, if you demonstrate that, they're going to become a product of that environment.
100%.
If you create an environment of inclusion, of loyalty, of vulnerability and comfort, then over time, it's not because you're managing different personalities, but over time, uh, they'll feel more comfortable coming to you. Sometimes too comfortable. Sometimes they bring you things that have nothing to do with what you're there to talk to them about, and that's okay too. But that's where you build relationships. But at the end of the day, in my mind, a leader has to be somebody who's approachable, but that doesn't mean that you don't have accountability. That doesn't
Exactly.
mean that you don't set guidelines and expectations in order for these individuals to excel in whatever it is they want to excel in. Some of the best leaders I've ever seen, when they're doing goal setting with their associates, or however you want to call them, they don't just do professional goals. They have them throw in some personal goals as well to help instill that balance, that harmony, and make sure that they're not only that they're working to support their personal goals in life, as opposed to their personal goals in life being set aside for their work.
And Jeremy, I know where you're leading this, but how does that connect to success for the associate and also for the leader, right? Because I think you're getting a lot of buy-in for the full coverage, but how do you, I'm sure in the organizations you work with, you've seen it done the right way and you've seen it done the wrong way. Can you talk to the folks a little bit about how that does translate down if it's going good? And then number two, the other question I have here is I've also seen some leaders come in with the right systems, but they haven't had the accountability with themselves. And I think it's like, so we're brushing on a couple of things there. If the person doesn't have it themselves, I think it's impossible to really translate that down. But knowing your world, talk to me about some of those examples you've seen of that have gone well, where like the leader can have those boundaries and good organization combine the two skill sets. And then maybe even a story from yourself. Talk to me about one time where it hasn't. Because I know when you're saying this, I can think of like 3 or 4 times I've messed up bad in my life and 3 or 4 times where I hit a home run on the same subject after making a few mistakes on this.
Well, yeah, and I think it's important to know that what we're talking about here is not just development of the people who report to you, it's development of
Of
yourself.
yourself.
It's being self-critical to say, how did I handle that? And how could I handle that differently in the future? And I think sometimes a lot of companies and a lot of leaders, and I separate the term manager and leader because they're two
100%.
very
Yep.
different things. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, you know, I probably learned more from where it didn't go right than when I'm celebrating the wins of when it went right, you
Great
know?
human nature. Yeah. We're all that. And Jeremy, if more people could just have the confidence to embrace that, because like I'll say this, it is bold. Every fucking person on the planet learns that way better. There is no person out there that doesn't. And if they say they don't, it's a level of insecurity because they don't want to be caught in the action. And I find that a lot in leaders too. The only skill set I would throw out, and maybe it's not a skill set, it's a discipline, being able to take feedback, honestly, right? I mean, we've had to walk away from some clients, and not dropping names, but massive organizations having a massive opportunity, hiring an outside company to fix a problem, not listening to a thing that was said, doing the same thing, regurgitating the same stuff that was leading them to the same failures. And, it never surprises me, but it always surprises me at the lack of leadership development that's out there for some large organizations, and this is one of the things I usually try to give back to small entrepreneurs is like, you can put these people on a pedestal, but it's usually false. And we're all the same. And we all, again, different skill sets, different opportunity scores. But if we all focus on the values that we all have and possess, anybody can grow into the person they want to become. Now, again, am I going to go be Michael Jordan and dunk a basketball? Probably not my best opportunity score with my height, my athleticism. But I think, those things out there, I see so many folks get paralyzed by fear or that insecurity starts with the inability to be developed as a leader because they're always comparing themselves to someone else. And I would say the other thing that I throw in is, as a leader, if you're competing with the person in the mirror every day, you're always going to have a win, even if it's a fail.
So absolutely. And so here's what you asked the question, for examples. I use the term arrogance, and my wife will watch this podcast and say, "Jeremy, you're arrogant."
I'm sure my fiance will say the same thing.
and maybe I probably am. But what I think it is when you've got strong-willed managers who can't be self-critical, who are not willing to be vulnerable, they can't take that peer-to-peer or 360 communication or criticism to say, hey, this could be better. So, I've watched circumstances in my career where you have those authoritative leaders, you have that person who says, I'm this, and it's my way or the highway. Mm-hmm. And the results, they may get that transactional result because then the people hop to and they do it. But it's not sustainable because those people are unhappy. Those people look for other environments to go to. Those people will take shortcuts. They're not invested. They're not owning, like you as the leader or you as the manager are owning this job or this company or whatever the case may be. Alternatively, when you invest in their ownership, when you invest that passion in them, when you give them some autonomy and some empowerment to make decisions and make mistakes and fail, but fail forward, they're going to learn. And it may take a little bit longer to get there because they're learning. You may already be there at the finish line and they're trying to catch up in that race, but they're going to value you and be loyal to you for giving them that opportunity. When you take the transactional out of it, when it's not just I'm collecting a paycheck for doing this task, you're going to get more out of them and your company's going to thrive better. Your product is going to sell better. Your employees are going to perform better because of that investment.
And the other thing I throw in there too is I think, as a leader, specifically if we're talking about a senior executive or especially an owner, your quality of life is going to get better. I mean, I can just tell you this from my own endeavors. I need to have a team that I can fully trust and verify, but that fully trust part is important, right? So I'm well aware that I will lose a majority of my team throughout the years if there's a better opportunity, and I am excited for them for that. I am always trying to provide the best opportunity for anyone on my team, but I have to enter every week knowing that if there's a better opportunity out there, I have to be prepared to have that person's replacement. I have to have had enough conversations to know, like, is this opportunity I'm providing to X, is this really the best opportunity for them? And usually where I try to enter this, which is a little bit, I think it's a subtle difference. And honestly, this was taught to me from years of hospitality operations. I'm okay with people using us for what they need, for the time that they need, if we have a mutual beneficial relationship. And that kind of gets it out of the transactional, so some of the folks pretty well that work on our team. And I think one of the things that, again, didn't start off doing great. I can't sit here and say, oh my God, listen to what I say because I've done everything right. I can say, don't do X, Y, Z because it might go bad for you, right? But I think just treating them as the full human and saying, look, at the end of the day, the world is changing, and I'm talking to the CEOs out there. Whether or not we go back to unfully remote or not, I think it's yet to be seen. They're doing some very fascinating trials in the UK and in Europe with 4-day work weeks. It's working pretty well. I can tell you that one of the most problems that we address when we're consulting for recruitment, for operations, for marketing, usually 90% of the problems are a lack of engagement from the team, right? So whether that is sales are growing too much and there's not enough time for training and retention, but it's kind of like a cyclical event that just keeps impacting each other. So, I mean, I resonate with so much of what you're saying here. And I just think now more than ever, leaders need to be influenced for how much the world is transitioning. And I don't think, and this is going to kind of go on a little bit of an off wind here, I don't think we can look up to a lot of the leaders we have in the world right now. But I do think a lot of the folks that have built something out of themselves within business have kind of absorbed enough. They've taken some chances on themselves. They've made some mistakes. And, now what we're really trying to do is encourage some of those voices and some of those leadership qualities to come out. My main fear of where we live today, Jeremy, is we're in such an influential stage. And what I see from a lot of influencers on LinkedIn is, I'm sorry, bullshit garbage. And if a lot of people take those practices and they apply them because they saw someone have 150,000 followers and 20,000 likes on a bad statement, I go through on a daily basis and see like 30 to 40 variations of the same post regurgitating, right? So, and especially with the implement of AI, which excites me, but it also terrifies me right now. And I know we didn't get into this too much, Jeremy, but I think if we don't really grasp a hold of where education should be, and we look up in 10 years, I think we can live in a very different, not only political scheme, but I think in a business scheme, economic scheme across the planet. So we talked about, what priorities a great leadership possess. I think I'm really understanding how that translates down to the team, right? We talked about the benefit of the personnel, the benefit of the individual. How do you see companies benefiting from this, right? So I want to separate this a little bit. How do you see companies that have had a great track record of leadership and executive coaching and development and training and ongoing? How does that impact them? Like, what are some of the things you see consistently with those brands that they just get it and they continue to do it and they repeat it?
The one thing or the one word I would use for those companies is fluidity.
Okay.
They realize that what's the working person is looking for is today, post-COVID, whatever the case may be, is different than it used to be. And those leaders who are willing to bounce in the water and understand that things change and accept that change, and embrace it in a way that they can apply what they used to do and make it relevant to today's worker. Today's worker, you mentioned, the people who are the influencers and so forth. I too am annoyed. You scroll on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and you're annoyed by these people getting 1 million likes and views and things of that nature. And it's not relevant. And in some ways it's often wrong and it's inappropriate. But the truth of the matter is, out of the 6 or 7 billion people on this planet, they are a very small minority of people with a very loud voice.
Yep.
And the majority of people have a little bit more common sense and are really looking for kind of some normalcy. But what the workers, in my view, are looking for in today's age is purpose with what they're doing. If I'm going to come work for you, Shaun, what is the purpose? What am I doing to better myself? What am I doing to better the world? What am I doing to better the companies that I'm interacting with? What am I doing? So what's my purpose? And as a leader, we really need to delve in and look at what our purpose is. Are we creating jobs? That's what you do in staffing. The government says that they created these jobs. It's bullshit. Okay. Companies create jobs. Staffing firms, recruiting firms create jobs because they're out there and they're saying, you need this or we need this and we can provide it and we know how to provide it. Okay. That's what creates it. That's a purpose.
I've got a great question because I think you're saying so much gold right now. How does a brand do a better job? Because I know there's going to be a lot of listeners out there of like, okay, we have a great purpose, but how do they showcase that to their potential employees? Because I think this is a real struggle because I see two components today. I see people that say, F this, where the world's going today, we're not going to do it. And they're not having the best results. The other folks don't have to your point, you don't have to agree with it always, but embrace that the world is changing, and if the world is changing, change with it a little bit. But for those folks in that category, Jeremy, that are like, okay, my company has a purpose. We've hired in one way for 20 years. All of a sudden I woke up and the world changed, because I know there's some great folks out there in that boat. How can they do a better job of not just marketing their purpose, but having that translate down to even their job description for the candidate that's on the interview process. So everyone in their entity kind of emulates what that purpose is. Because I think that's a big opportunity in today's world.
I agree with you. And I think, Shaun, I think the way to look at this is companies tend to be really good at delivering a message of their purpose and their product to who they want to purchase their purchase.
Consumers, exactly. I know.
To the consumer.
I know.
Why would it be any different for the people that are working for you? You want them to buy in. Do you agree with this purpose? Do you see a flaw in my purpose? Do you see a flaw in my product? You're going to work for me. I'm going to pay you. I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear what you think of this product. And if you don't buy in, if you wouldn't buy my product, if you weren't in this situation to buy the product or buy this purpose or to buy this thing, then maybe we're not the right fit for you to make your livelihood.
And I want to tie this back to what you originally said, but my God, is this, it's so true right now too. If we can connect this back to the purpose, but we turn things away from transactional, right? Because I think even what you're saying now is they can do it because we're thinking transactionally always, but you can still think emotionally, just take the transaction out of the picture. Because what we talked about too, like we're both huge fans of Simon Sinek, and I think I've been someone two different ways in my life, and I've probably embraced Simon Sinek for too long because I think, you knew for a couple of years of my life for HCR, we weren't running any advertisements because we didn't need to. Well, that's kind of a stupid philosophy by my part, if I'm being completely honest. So sales were going good. We didn't need to, but we probably should have. And no, probably we should have been. So I think even as myself, I've developed on some of these things. But, as Simon Sinek says, like if we can connect to the purpose, you don't have to manage as hard because now you've got a bunch of empowered, intelligent workforce that are working towards your same goals. And I think to go back to what you first said, that can only be done if you're quantifying what the individual's goals are and you're checking and transposing, okay, do they align with our organization? And if they're only going to align for 3 years, how can I get this guy or gal as far as I can in 3 years? And how can we get the most use out of that as well? Because I think too often we're trying to be... There's no politically correct way to say this. I think keywords and trigger statements are very popular today, but I find the brands that are saying the slang the most are not, we don't always see that resonate down to their actual actions. So curious with you, do you see some organizations that are trying to kind of get their purpose to connected that are struggling, or have you helped any brands recently kind of get their purpose and messaging out a little better before they were working with you?
I don't know that I have an example off the top of my head specific to your question. What I would say in leadership, and you've touched on this a little bit, and I want to comment on it. You keep saying, the people you have may only be with you for a limited moment in time. It could be 2 years, it could be 15 years, but at the end of the day, it's a moment in time. And one of the things that I always encourage when we're talking to the people on my team is understanding what their goals are and what they want to be. I have said for years to my bosses, especially when I feel that I am empowered and that I am bought into the purpose and I'm part of it, I'm coming after your job. You better start looking for your next move, either up in the company or sideways or whatever, because I'm going to be in your spot next.
But they're in your way. In a positive way.
But you're in my way.
In a positive way. Yeah, super positive. Yeah.
I like it when my associates say it to me. When my team says, I want to be your role, I want to get there. How do I get there? What do I do? Then you know that they've bought in. And if they don't want to do this, if this is a means, as you said, sometimes they utilize what we're providing for them to learn and then take it to what it is that they want to go do ultimately. If this is a means to an end for them, that's okay too. Leave your legacy behind.
It's been a great day chatting with you. Please let everybody watching Taking Chances, how can they get in contact with you? How can they find more information out? If it's a B2B business, someone that just wants to get engaged with someone like yourself, how can they get some of this great content from you?
Shaun, thank you so much for inviting me on Taking Chances. This has been wonderful. I look forward to talking to you in the future. Best way to get a hold of me, we will drop my LinkedIn profile in the bottom of this link. And then my email is jeremy.scottfriedman@gmail.com. And my direct phone number is 720-387-9685. We'll also have both of those as a link that Shaun will put at the bottom of the Taking Chances podcast.
Once again, Jeremy, thanks for being here. We'll try to get you back on for March. I think so much good content, so many good good opportunities for people to really reinvest themselves into their education. So looking forward to having you on again, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.